scheduled Democratic debate actually going to happen? And is Joe Biden really the most electable candidate?
That's right. We're joined by friends of the show, Democratic strategist and Obama administration alum Roger Fisk, and Lauren Claffey, founder of Claffey Communications, previously served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security. Two great friends of the show.
It's sort of adorable, the little Vanna White situation you did.
I love when our panelists get along.
I need to start doing it to you too.
Both of you do. All right, Roger, let's start with you. So Joe Biden, presumed Democratic nominee at this point, front runner, barring any big things that's going to happen. The debate is going to happen on Sunday. What are the stakes there for him? Because his campaign has basically kept him in a box. He hasn't been out on the stump. I mean, only a 7-minute speech. The only time they really did, he had this very crazy interaction with voters that I outlined in the show today.
Don't worry, he's not going to take your AR-14,
right.
though.
Your AR-14.
Good.
Two hours of unvarnished Joe Biden. By the way, no audience. So CNN has announced that there will not be an audience because of coronavirus concerns. This is like some Nixon-Kennedy stuff that's happening here, direct to the camera. I mean, I don't really know.
It's going to be in black and white.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
What do you think, Roger? What are the stakes there for him? I don't think that's a good format for him with no crowd.
It's not a good format for anyone.
Yeah.
First off, and good morning. Thanks so much for having me. The stakes are always high at this point. It's very easy for people to start to think that the narrative is like settling and flatlining, right? And you can even think to 2 weeks ago when we thought there was a relatively calcified narrative in place, right? And that's been turned on its head. It gets more difficult as we go closer or closer towards, the late spring. Because once someone has a delegate lead of 150 or 200 delegates, then the other person has to start winning states 80, 20, 90, 10 stuff, right? Which I think we can all agree is not going to happen. But to your specific question, I mean, the stakes are always high going into these things.
Yeah.
And my counsel, provided only here and not in an affiliated context, is he should just the same as I would recommend that he does in the fall, should he end up debating the current occupant of the White House, which is just put on horse blinders and look directly into the camera and speak directly to the American people and shut out what the other person is basically saying, because I think we're past necessarily a persuasion exercise.
Right.
And it's more a question of, can he just keep this momentum going and keep this trend going? Because obviously it's very Biden favorable right now.
I mean, look, at this point, especially with Florida coming next week, which is a big state in terms of delegates, and it's a very good state in terms of Joe Biden, Roger's exactly right. The math becomes almost impossible. With it not being winner take all, you have to not only win, you have to win by big margins to try to make up the delegate lead that Joe Biden has at this point. I do wonder, though, I mean, look, Biden had the South Carolina win, and then Super Tuesday came right on its heels. That gave him overwhelming momentum, and voters haven't really had to hear from him again and be reminded of some of the weaknesses that caused him to perform so poorly in those early states. I just wonder if there's not going to be a bit of buyer's remorse going like, oh, is this really the guy to go up against Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm most interested to see, like if the debate moves forward on Sunday, is really how Joe Biden appeals to Bernie supporters. Like, how is he going to pull in that left that was so skeptical to him, that base? Because he really does have to energize them if they're going to convert in order to go and have massive get out the vote effort and massive show up for the general election. Because there is enthusiasm on the Republican side, and they need to be able to match that.
That's exactly right. And it goes to the core question of electability. Roger, I mean, you were on the Obama campaign. I saw there's a lot of fools, I think, on cable right now saying, oh, Joe Biden is recreating the Obama coalition. But what was one of the magic parts of the Obama coalition? Young voters, new people who were brought into the process. Those young voters are voting for Sanders even today at 77 to 19 margins just out of the state of Michigan. That is not an Obama, that's a Hillary coalition. That's not an Obama coalition. Are those people going to show up for him to vote? And what does he need to do in order to energize them?
I mean, running mate picks are always overrated, I think, in terms of what they can add to a narrative. But still, in this context, it's very important. Leaning female, probably minority. If I had to guess right now, I would say probably Val Demings, for example. So some of that can be done there. And then also, you have the reflective surface of the current occupant of the White House, which if you look at the swing districts around the country, if the president just went radio silence today, he would probably be reelected. But he is his own worst enemy. He's his campaign's worst enemy.
Sure.
He's the RNC's worst enemy. He's the Senate and the House's worst enemy. On and on and on. So I think what Biden needs to do is now get through the rest of these primaries. And I don't want to jump to our next segment, but no one should be like calling this over or anything. There's a lot more to come. And then at some point, present a comprehensive, cogent vision for the country that includes everything from retirement to skill training to education, on, and lay out kind of like the whole kind of spectrum of his vision.
Right.
And I think at some point,
some of that hasn't been done.
Right, and especially in a kind of a comprehensive way, which is then when you have also the one-on-one kind of dynamic. And I think, and then also, in strategic uses of surrogates and all kinds of different things, you can make some inroads. But then at the same time, the youth hasn't shown up as much as people wanted to, because that was kind of Sanders' whole, well, at least 50% of Sanders' rationale, which hasn't really manifested.
I mean, but AOC has kind of like telegraphed last night, like, well, the left, we can still fight within the party and move things forward, and kind of telegraphing that if Biden is the nominee, that they just need to be pushing Biden into a more left position, and so signifying that they would support, but, they really need to embrace some of those base issues. And Andrew Yang already went on CNN the other day and endorsed Biden last night. So, I mean, how much do those endorsements, people that, have large following with young progressives, does that make a difference for Biden? I mean, more so than probably than a VP pick or any of those types of things.
Here's my thing, Roger, is I don't see why, if you have everybody pledging we're going to back Joe anyway, whether he supports progressive priorities or not, I don't see how the progressive wing has any leverage in that situation. He just won without you. You're saying you're going to support him anyway. Where's the leverage?
Well, I think it's not leverage. I would say it's a seat at the table. I mean, one of the most interesting things for me, and we've touched on this in a bunch of ways around this table, is the quiet conversations, right? Like if Biden is, politically astute, and I would say in this context he is, he's picking 3 or 4 people that can go out and start to have these conversations with some of these large organizations that need to be brought in quietly, and really lay the foundation so that concerns can be ventilated, people can be brought in, platforms can be discussed, etc. None of it will happen in front of cameras if they're smart, although you can put a cherry on the sundae at the end, and when you're ready to then kind of roll out this kind of stitched together coalition. But that is, to me, the most interesting level of conversation right now, and it's one that we're not really going to be privy to until it manifests.
I think you're right. The thing is, though, Lauren, is that these voters are not necessarily they're not going to be swayed by our revolution going out and be like, okay, we're going to vote for Joe. I mean, you kind of see this with the Trump phenomenon, because the way that Trump won was he took all these, traditional Mitt Romney people, not enough to put you in the White House, and then brought in a whole host of new people. And yes, some people stayed home. So it really is incumbent upon, when you have these anti-establishment bases, you have to kind of speak to their issues. And I'm just skeptical that any sort of organizational, look, Bernie, barnstormed for Hillary, and still I think 20% of his voters voted for Trump, at least in some of the key states. People don't just necessarily
left the presidential slot blank.
Left the presidential slot blank. Andrew Yang has admitted himself 40% of my voters voted for Trump. So you don't have necessarily people who will just follow along.
Yeah, and I think that's actually where the DNC runs the most risk coming up, is if they try to stifle the natural fizzle of Bernie and not give him his complete runway, complete platform, debate stage and all, in any sort of effort to protect Biden through this next phase.
And they're doing that already, which is Jim Clyburn said last night, this thing is over. We need to cancel the primary, Roger. We shouldn't even have a debate. I'm reading that. I'm like, this is like the Joe Biden protection program, right? Coming out there and immediately trying to cancel the debate.
But he'll shush you. If
it's like you need to read it. Shh.
Yeah. Call me old-fashioned, but I just believe that the rules are the rules and the process is the process.
Yeah.
Right? And everyone enters the arena agreeing to a certain set of rules and the calendar and everything else, and then you go ahead and you exhaust that.
I obviously agree with you, but do you think there will be a movement to cancel the debate? They can pin it on, look, they've already pulled the live audience. There's, rallies that have been canceled from both Bernie and Biden at this point. They say that, coronavirus concerns are just too grave. Sorry, we can't go through with it.
Yeah.
The response to that is there's plenty of 21st century tools that would allow the debate to continue.
Yeah,
you can just put them on split screens or whatever.
Right.
They can be on opposite coasts. So that could be extinguished, I think, relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And I don't think that anyone would necessarily try to do that. And if they did, it could be called out relatively easily. I certainly would.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be amazing split screen debate.
Yeah, I mean, imagine trying to have a debate with somebody.
Viewership is
great at
plummeting
it.
as we speak.
Yeah, truly. I mean, imagine having a debate through IFB. That
Oh
would be
my
a very,
gosh,
very
yeah.
difficult.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, especially
Can
for
you
two
imagine?
older men.
can you imagine those
Like
wandering
Strom
eyes?
Thurmond yelling into a
Yeah.
microphone, like, hello.
All right. With that hellish image. Yeah. Everybody take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.